to clearly understand what really happened. We will have to go back and forth in time. It could make you dizzy and confused. But it is the only way that this mother of all conflicts can be understood. We say mother of all conflict not in a metaphorical way, or as a figure of speech, not even in a casual way. We say it with utmost conviction that this war in Jerusalem may ultimately lead to the destruction of our entire planet. Something in lines of what happened to planet Marduk, situated once between planet Mars and Jupiter. If you show little patience, and if required pause and rewind and listen to the information given, do so, otherwise, you will end up more confused and disoriented than before. For the sake of our viewers' understanding, we will divide the events into three main categories. In green slides, we will show the events that are taking place among humans. In yellow slides, we will show the events that are taking place among giants or Nephilim. In black slides, we will show the events that are taking place among Anunnaki. All these events occurred one after another, or one event leads to the other, and sometimes some of the events were occurring simultaneously. We will try to show, to the best of our ability with the gathered information, how Anunnaki chose humans as their proxy soldiers, and tell you how this Game of Thrones they were playing among themselves was fueled by their unquenchable ego, that will ultimately lead to Armageddon and Sodom and Gomorrah. We now focus on Anunnaki camp. An urgent meeting is called for, by all the senior Anunnakis on Earth. The two clans of Anunnaki, that is the Enlilites and Enkiites, are at loggerheads with yet another issue. Each one, shouting at the other, accusing one and another of the situation that has arisen. The meeting was presided by none other than Enlil, the Lord of Command on Earth. Among all the Anunnaki assembled, one Nibiruan was most anxious and seemed particularly perturbed about the whole situation which was unfolding. He was the grandson of Enlil. His name, Utashamash. He was the son of Nannar-Sin. He was shouting on top of his lungs, and accusing the opposing Enki's camp. These words were recorded in the Sumerian tablet called Kedar-Laomer texts. He said, "Before the gods the son of his father came, on that day Shamash, the Bright One, against the Lord of Lords Marduk," he said. "The faithfulness of his heart, the king, betrayed in the time of the 13th year. A falling out against my father, he had. To his faith-keeping the king ceased to attend. All this Nebu has caused to happen. What is he talking about?" To understand the reasons for this outburst, we have to visit year approximately 2200 BC, when Lord Enlil turned over the kingship of Sumer to his son Nannar-Sin. The era that followed, called the Era of Nannar, was one of the most glorious period in Sumerian annals. His first task was to make the city of Ur, a great metropolis, and capital of vast empire. His spectacular residence called the Ziggurat of Ur still stands today, even after 4,500 years. He, Nannar-Sin, appointed a new line of rulers, known to the scholars as The third dynasty of Ur. The first ruler of this third dynasty was Ur-Nammu, whose name meant joy of Ur. Ur-Nammu was not a mere mortal. He was a semi-divine being. That is, he was born to an Anunnaki mother, goddess Nin-Sun, and to a human father, who was a high priest in the temple of god Nannar-Sin. Ur-Nammu was a great warrior and administrator, proclaiming a new code of justice and social behavior. Ur-Nammu established equity in the land, banished malediction, ended violence, and strife. Times under the third dynasty of King Ur-Nammu was not only a period of prosperity but also a period of peace. After assuming the throne, Ur-Nammu began construction and restoration of new and old temples of gods of Enlilites, starting with the temple at Ekur, situated in Nippur. Enlil finally found his righteous shepherd. In the olden days, kings were appointed by God. Kings were called shepherd because it was they who protected the citizens and maintained law and order. According to God's people, we're like sheep, with herd mentality, who could be misled very easily. Enlil was so satisfied with Ur-Nammu that he found Ur-Nammu worthy of holding the divine weapon. This divine weapon was mentioned in the Sumerian clay tablets as follows: the divine weapon that which in the hostile lands heaps up the rebels in piles. To Ur-Nammu, the shepherd, he, the Lord Enlil, has given it to him. Like a bull to crush the foreign land, like a lion to hunt it down, to destroy the evil cities, clear them of opposition to the lofty. The evil cities, what Lord Enlil is talking about, are the cities that worship and are under Lord Enki's control. This was the first time in history that Enlil trusted someone other than his own family member to hold such power. This newly found faith in others by Enlil was short-lived. When Ur-Nammu during the restoration works of old temples of gods also seemed to have done some restoration works of the temple of Enki in Eridu. If you folks can recall, Enki and Enlil, though brothers born to the same father, are bitter enemies. Ur-Nammu went on to do some restoration work even in the temple of Ninruta and temple of Marduk in Babylon. This was seen as a sign of betrayal by Nannar-Sin, son of Enlil, under whose authority Ur-Nammu was appointed as ruler of Nippur. Why should the king, appointed and protected by him, do restoration of an enemy's temple? Nannar-Sin was an enemy of Ninurta, who was the firstborn to his father, Enlil. They two were half-brothers. Ninurta was the firstborn, heir apparent to succeed Enlil, and Nannar-Sin was the legitimate son of Enlil by marriage. These two half-brothers were in constant competition as to who should succeed Enlil. So the restoration work on the temple of his rival, half-brother Ninurta, was seen as an insult by Nannar-Sin. Adding insult to the injury was when King Ur-Nammu seemed to have restored the temples of Enki and Marduk, who were sworn enemies of his father Lord Enlil. This betrayal was too much to bear, for this was seen as an insult to him, that is Nannar-Sin, and to his father Lord Enlil. This ongoing distrust between the gods and their appointed rulers was further compounded, which led to the death of King Ur-Nammu. He met his tragic end on the battlefield. This was seen by the people of Ur as a deliberate act by Lord Enlil, who decreed his death warrant. The account of which is written in the Sumerian clay tablets. Ur-Nammu, the might of Nannar, met a tragic death on the battlefield. The enemy land revolted. The enemy acted hostilely in a battle in that unnamed but distant land. Ur-Nammu's chariot got stuck in the mud. Ur-Nammu fell off it. The chariot like a storm rushed along, leaving Ur-Nammu behind, abandoned on the battlefield like a crushed jug. Furthermore, it is recorded in the texts, when the boat carrying the noble king's body was hit with a storm and sank in the waters, carrying the body of the king with it. The people didn't even have a chance to pay their last respects to their beloved king. When the news reached Ur, a great lament went up. The people could not understand how a righteous shepherd king like Ur-Nammu, one who has protected his citizens like his own children, and was true to his gods, could have met such a disgraceful end. They could not understand why Lord Nannar's son Enlil's son did not protect him, and why Inanna Ishtar, the Lady of Heaven, did not put her noble hand around his head. Why the gods did step aside and let this tragedy happen. Surely the citizens felt this was the betrayal of the gods. It is inscribed in the Sumerian texts how the fate of the hero has been changed on who altered his holy word. Enlil deceitfully changed his fate decree. The manner in which Ur-Nammu had died in 2096 BC may have triggered the behavior of his successors, the third dynasty of Ur, who so far held their fealty to the Enlilites, and now through successive generations became bitter enemies of Enlilites and became independent marshals. And slowly shifted their loyalty to much more lenient and understanding gods of Enkiites. This laid the foundation stone for the conflict in the Middle East, with a future spaceport in Jerusalem at its focal point. After the death of Ur-Nammu led to a mass exodus of citizens of Ur. They abandoned their cities, which seemed like a wasteland without their beloved king. They abandoned the temples of Enlil and Nannar. Priests stopped their daily rituals and moved out of the city of Ur. The entire cities under the control of Enlilites were abandoned by their citizens and left to waste. One of the priests who abandoned the temple of Ur was Terah, father of the first Hebrew patriarch Abraham. This is important point to remember, as we will later see the significance of this fact. In ancient Akkadian language, Tyre, the predecessor to the word Terah, meant an artifact or vessel for magical purpose. But in Sumerian, the cuneiform sign of the word Tyre stemmed directly from Dug.Namtar, literally meaning a fate speaker, a pronouncer of oracles. Terah, the father of Abraham, then was an oracle speaker, one assigned to approach the stone that whispers. Now wait for a second. You say what? A stone that whispers. We have discussed this in our previous episode, Enki, Shiva Part 2. That the deities in all major temples on earth, not considering insignificant structures that have sprung up like mushrooms, where the innocent public have invested their devotion in a blind manner, and organized mafia of so-called priests have cheated, misguided, milked the public of their wealth and emotions, and have left them utterly confused. In the olden days, there used to be only a few temples, in places carefully selected by our gods, who are Anunnaki. In these temples, as we have mentioned in our previous episode Enki, Shiva Part 2, the main deities in these temples were not made by the hands of man. There is a word in Indian terminology called Svayambhu, meaning self-made, or self-manifested. These figurines, made of stone, seemed to have appeared from nowhere, and few chosen human was made aware of its existence with precise coordinates as to where to find it, either through a dream or some oracle speaker. Then the so-called chosen human being was asked to find the stone deity and install it in a chosen place, and was instructed to build a temple around that deity so that people could worship it. One of such oracle speaker who was speaking to the stone that whispers was one of 12 L-Wars, guru of Sri Ramanujacharya, who was one of the main exponents of Sri Vaishnavism tradition within Hinduism, whose ancient Advaita Vedanta monastic tradition was adopted for day-to-day affairs of the temple in Tirumala at Tirupati, located in the state of Andhra Pradesh in India. Whether it be a deity in the temple of Ur, where Terah, father of Abraham, was the high priest, whether it be the Ark of the Covenant, to which Moses used to hear God speak, or whether it be Alwar, the guru of Sri Ramanujacharya, who used to speak to the deity in the temple of Sri Ranganatha Swami Temple, located in Tamil Nadu in India, which exists even today. Or whether be it deity Kali in the temple, located in Dakshineshwar Kali Temple, who communicated with Sri Ramakrishna Paramhamsa, who directed even his disciple Swami Vivekananda to go and seek answers for his spiritual questions. We would also submit that the black stone, called Al-Hajaru al-Aswad, installed on the eastern side of Kaaba in Mecca, is also not man-made. It is told it fell from the sky to guide Adam and Eve were to build an altar. So this stone too is Swayambhu, or self-manifested, not made by man. We can go on and on about these stone deities, speaking to their chosen humans, who have been thoroughly vetted for their adherence and complete submission to the will of that particular deity. We suspect that these stone deities were made by highly intelligent beings, who embedded within these statues a kind of a very advanced radio, sort of the device which could receive and transmit speakers' voices, if you really stand close to it. And we suspect that they must be self-powered mechanisms, usually nuclear, which explains the unusual radiations measured from these statues which exist even today. These Anunnaki gods who appointed the so-called priest, carefully selected by them to relate to the deity statue all the affairs that were going on in their kingdom, and ask for solutions and guidance. This message was transmitted by the advanced communication device embedded inside the statue to the appropriate Anunnaki god, who was located in an undisclosed location, either on Earth, or sometimes even on another planet, from where that particular god would give direction to the high priest, so as to what to do, in form of speech which came as a whisper from the statue, so that only the high priest could hear what the god was saying and not anyone else standing nearby. This is how Anunnaki gods used to control the affairs of their respective territories and different locations from one single point. Quite remarkable if you can wrap your head around it. Getting back to where we left off. When King Ur-Nammu was killed on the battlefield, the entire population of the city of Ur abandoned the city. At that time Terah, father of Abraham, took his entire family, his son, his grandson Lot, his daughter, who was also his daughter-in-law Sarah, went forth from Ur to the land of Canaan, and went as far as Haran and dwelt there. Abraham was aged about 10 years old when this happened, so he was a child. Their family lived there for a long time. Then suddenly the Lord acted again. Abraham was 75 years. And Lord said to Abraham, as written in the Bible, "And Yahweh said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country and out of thy birthplace, and from thy father's house, unto the land which I will show thee. And Abraham departed as Yahweh had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he left Haran. It was 2048 BC. Here we can find the God, who took a new identity, and presented himself with a new name so that Abraham would not recognize him as the same God of his father, who was the high priest at the temple of Ur. We suspect it was at this moment in time God for the first time presented himself as Yahweh. Please hold that thought for a moment, as we shall circle back to this point again. So Yahweh says to Abraham, "Get up and move, we have a war coming." What is that war? We shall see. After the deluge, that is the Great Flood, these semi-divine warriors, Nephilim or Rephaim, occupied much tract of land called Canaan, and Transjordan. They were semi-divine because they were children of Anunnaki fathers and human mothers. They were hybrid species. During the 3rd millennium BC, they owed their loyalty to Nanarsin, son of Enlil, of Mesopotamia. After the tragic death of their king Ur-Nammu and his successor Sulgi, of 3rd dynasty kings, they discontinued and outgrew from the fealty towards the Enlilites gods, and became independent marshals of the western lands. These Rephaim became formidable warriors, with their great physical strength. They were fierce warriors who commanded great military power. They built fortresses around their cities with glass-like fortifications, which were unbreachable. The wheels of their chariots were made of iron. Their weapons like bow and arrows were made of iron. They were swift charioteers and were the only ones in the world during that period known to have used weapons of iron, while the rest of the world was using bronze. Their descendants were called Ixos, who occupied Egypt for over 400 years, with the biblical name Amalekites. It was they who prevented Hebrew tribes under Moses from entering the land of Canaan. They were also called Anakites, named after their leader, Anak, and also as Philistines. They controlled and occupied the part of the land that Hebrews occupied in the period known as that of Judges. The history of giants is interwoven with the destiny of Hebrews, right from Abraham to Moses, right through to Solomon. Archaeologists excavating at Ras Shamra, on the coast of Syria, a few miles from the modern city of Laodicea, found numerous clay tablets from 12th to 13th century BC. This site turned out to be the ancient city of Ugarit. Several of these tablets refer to a group of enigmatic people, called Upim. These clay tablets were collectively called Rephaim texts, because of the close analogy with Hebrew texts called Aphim or Rephaim. These semi-divine giants warriors were known under various local names, such as Anakim, Amalekites and Philistines. All of them were formidable warriors, with superior weapons made of iron. They are described in the Exodus. When Moses decided to send his scouts north of Canaan. When these 12 scouts returned to Moses, they had some bad news. They were horrified, and said to Moses, "The people who inhabit that part of the country were very powerful and their cities are well fortified. All the people in these cities are of great size, and we looked like grasshoppers when compared to them." When the average height of a human being is about 5.5 feet tall, the Rephaim was about 9 to 14 feet tall. Seeing such semi-divine beings or demigods must have been an imposing sight. King of Og of Bashan, who was reported to be the last of Rephaim, was supposed to be a huge man, whose bedstead was 9 cubits long, and 4 cubits wide. A cubit measures about 15 inches, so that would make him 11 feet tall and 5 feet wide at his shoulders. The Philistine Goliath, who fought David, was 6 cubits tall and 1 cubit span, that would make him 8 feet tall. These imposing semi-divine gods or giants were tremendous warriors, whose large composite bows were said to outrange any other weapon. In the 2nd millennium BC, their iron-wheeled chariots terrorized the entire region. Protected by their glass-like fortification to their cities, they were invulnerable. They were given names such as Eman by Moabites, Zanzuman by Amorites, and Awim by the people of Nega. Originally occupying areas near Lebanon, Canaan, and Mount Ammon, they quickly spread to coastal Syria and Jordan. These semi-divine beings, giants, were godless for a time being. After they broke their loyalty with Enlilite, they continued as independent marshals of the western land. They found their favor in the Anakites, who were eager to get them into their fold. These giant beings found gods of Anakites, more understanding, and accessible than, compared to very elusive and rule-ridden, and insatiably egoistic Enlilite gods. We at Leonebula have a substantial reason to believe that it was god Nebu, son of god Marduk, who gave the giants the knowledge about the metallurgy of making iron, due to which their military strength became formidable and were successful in defending their territories, and aggression dealt by Anunnaki of that period. During that period, Anunnaki from Enlilite Camp had a space command center, located at El Paran, in Sinai Peninsula. The name meant God's glorified space. The god or Anunnaki Nibiruan who was in charge of this spaceport was Shamash, grandson of Enlil. The 5 kings of the Old Testament were King of Sodom, King of Gomorrah, King of Admah, King of Zebi, and King of Bela, which is Zoar. All these kingdoms were ruled by descendants of Nephilim and Rephaim, who held their allegiance by now to god Marduk and his son, god Nebu. Marduk was waiting in the watch, and was seeking revenge for what happened to his own spaceport in Babylon in 3450 BC. When he himself was in the process of building a space command center and spaceport in Babel, or Babli, the other name for Babylon. The Tower of Babel incident, which is recorded in the Bible as the portrayal of this event that happened in 3450 BC. When Enlil, who later called himself Yahweh, came to know about the separate space command center, built by Enkiites under the leadership of god Marduk, he was furious. There was supposed to be only one space command center on Earth, and that should be under the control of Enlil, whose name meant Lord of Command on Earth. This building of a separate and their own space command center was in direct violation of the decree passed by the king of Anunnaki, god Anu, but also in defiance to the authority of Enlil. It was Enlil, aka Yahweh, who spoke the following words in Bible. Please pay attention. When he, that is God, refers to someone other than himself as us, so this means there was someone else other than himself with whom he was discussing this issue. He said, "Behold, the people in one, and they have all one language, and this they begin to do, and now nothing will be retrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Go to, let us go down, and there confront their language, so that they may not understand one another's speech." So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. That is, he destroyed the spaceport in Babylon, which Enkiites were building. God Marduk remembered this and did not forget this painful incident. And now, when Enlilites themselves had their own space command center in El Paran, it was time to mete out the revenge in the same caliber. He wanted to either capture or completely destroy the space command center in El Paran. Either way, it was good for him. He was waiting for this opportune moment when the Enlilites were weak, and their own flock was fleeing and deserting their camp. This news reached the Enlilites' camp. Quickly a meeting was called for. There, Shamash, son of Nanarsin, grandson of Enlil, was perturbed and anguished by the news that Marduk and his son Nebu were gathering forces to attack his city, in El Paran, the spaceport of Anunnaki. These forces, he claimed, comprised of giants Rephaim, who were once loyal to his father, now switched sides to the Marduk's camp. What Shamash said, is recorded in the Kedar Laomer texts, in the 13th year, just as in Genesis 14 states. Before the gods, the son of his father came. On that day Shamash, the Bright One, against the Lord of Lords, Marduk, he said. The faithfulness of his heart the king betrayed. In the time of the 13th year, a falling out against my father, he had. To his faith-keeping the king ceased to attend. All this Nebu has caused to happen. The situation was grave, and the outcome was somehow obvious to the Enlilites Anunnaki. The assembled Anunnaki knew that they stood no chance when they were to face the Nephilim and Rephaim army. So they quickly appointed Elamite Kudur-Lag-Hamar as their military commander, and gave orders to strike first. They thought the first attack was their best defense. It was Enlilites who were first to attack the cities of Nephilim and Rephaim. They thought the best defense was to attack first and destroy the preparing army of the enemy. Kudur-Lag-Hamar first attacked Borsippa, the stronghold of Nebu, son of Marduk, and lay it to waste. Later he attacked the very center of god Marduk's stronghold, Babylon, and inflicts heavy damage. This is recorded in the Sumerian texts, called the Kedar Laomer texts. It says, the gods, to Kudur-Lag-Hamar, king of the land Elam, they decreed, descend there. That which to the city was bad he performed. In Babylon, the precious city of Marduk, kingship he overthrew. To herds of dogs, its temple he made a den. Flying ravens, loud shrieking, their dung dropped there. So as ordered by the Anunnakis, Kudur-Lag-Hamar descended on Borsippa, the command center of god Nebu, son of Marduk, and Babylon, god Marduk capital, with his army, and completely destroyed them. "14 years later, after the First War, in 2041 BC, Omar-Fel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, Kedor-Laomer, king of Elam, Tidal, king of Goim, along with Abraham launched the War of Kings in the Old Testament. God Nebu had his loyal followers in Canaan, comprising Bera, king of Sodom, Bersha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, Shemeber, king of Zebaim, and Bela, king of Zoar, gathered their forces, comprising mainly of the Nephilim giants and humans, under the instruction of his father god Marduk, attacked the Space Command Center in El Paran situated in Sinai Peninsula. When this news reached the Enlilites camp, they immediately swung into action. This incident is clearly recorded in the Bible. Abraham was at this time along with his wife Sarah, and his nephew, and was dwelling in Haran. He was 75 years old. It was here we suspect that Enlil changed, and addressed himself for the first time as Yahweh. We suspect this was done so that Abraham would not know that he is the same God at the temple of Or, to which his own father Terah was a high priest. It was the same God, who let down their king Ur-Nammu, and had him killed on the battlefield. As a consequence of which the people of the entire city of Ur felt betrayed and abandoned the entire city out of disgust. We suspect Abraham did not know the true identity of his God Yahweh. And so as it goes on, it is written, "And Yahweh said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country, and out of thy birthplace, and from thy father's house, unto the land which I will show thee." And Abram departed as Yahweh had spoken unto him. And Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he left Haran. Why God Yahweh did choose only Abraham? For the answer to that question, we have to see what the political landscape was around 4,000 years ago. First and foremost, was that Enlilites were having a bad reputation as gods. This was because the Enlilites' gods were very strict disciplinarians who demanded unconditional allegiance and surrender of their subjects to their will. They were ruthless to anybody who mutinies and disobey them. As a result, their popularity subsided among the general human population. This was due to their doing sometimes and in other cases when their own followers were influenced, and got converted to follow other gods. Which, if you pay attention, this system of stealing each other's livestock, is also happening to this present day. Where people are bombarded with propaganda, and influenced to shift from one religion to another. So there were not many sizable populations, who were loyal to Enlilites. Secondly, Abraham was a direct descendant of Shem, the firstborn son of Noah. Enlilites always preferred the firstborn. Abraham was of royal descent, his father was a high priest of a temple, his brother was called by a royal name, Milcah, which means queenly. And also, so was his wife Sarai, or Sarah, who was called Princess, who was also Abraham's half-sister. So you see their genetic pool was still intact. Thirdly, Abraham was a highly respected person in his tribe, and swayed his influence over his people, even people of other tribes. He had in his possession a great number of camels, horses, sheep and servants. He also commanded a great number of fierce fighters, who were known for their speed and agility on camels and horses. He was highly educated. Since he was a son of a high priest, he was a formidable military commander and diplomat. In fact, his military actions were admired by his enemies, so much that Nephilim giants came to offer him a stolen booty, and more as a gift, after the War of the Five Kings, which Abraham gracefully declined to accept. He said he will not accept even a shoelace for himself. He said, he fought the war for his God Yahweh, and nothing more. So you see, he was a man of honor. Which is why Yahweh chose him. Which is why, to this day his descendants the Hebrews, are known as the chosen people. And as the story goes, they will be rescued by Yahweh during the days of judgment. All because one man, when there was none other, took the side of Yahweh and fought for him. This selfless act of Abraham towards Yahweh earned him a place in Yahweh's heart. And this included his entire tribe, who also fought with Abraham. This is why Yahweh called Hebrews the chosen people. Now you know. This is why, name Abraham, which is, spelt as, Ram, which means Father's beloved. Abraham is Yahweh's beloved son. The army of giants and humans never reached the destined target of El Paran, the spaceport of Anunnaki, because a single man stood in their way and blocked them. This victory of Anunnaki's of Enlil camp was due to one single man's chivalry and military genius commanded by none other than Abraham. The retreating army of Canaan kidnapped Abraham's nephew Lot, who was residing at Sodom, along with huge booty, and escaped. Abraham, on hearing this, pursued and intercepted the retreating army at Damascus with his fast army of cavalrymen, and inflicted a severe defeat on the enemy, and released his nephew from their clutches. This war happened about 2041 BC. Abraham was 75 at that time. Anunnakis in Enlil's camp, who were in charge of the El Paran spaceport, knew they just dodged a bullet this time around. And Enlil, Lord of Command on Earth, knowing the nature of God Marduk, Lord of Lords, as the one who never gives up, expected wave after wave of attacks from Enkiite on El Paran. They knew the clear and present danger existed for their space command center. It was 17 years after the War of Kings was fought. Abraham was now 99 years old when this happened, as documented in Bible. And the Lord appeared unto him in the terebinth grove of Mamre, as he was sitting at the entrance of the tent in the heat of the day. And he lifted his eyes and looked, and behold, 3 men were stationed upon him. And as he saw them, he ran from the entrance of the tent towards them, and bowed to the ground. Abraham at once recognized them and addressed them as lords, and said, "Please, my lords, don't pass over thy servant," until he had a chance to prepare for them a sumptuous meal. It was dusk when the divine visitors finished eating and resting. Asking about Sarah, their leader said to Abraham, "Return I shall unto thee at this time next year, by then Sarah thy wife will have a son." Hearing this from behind the curtains, Sarah, who was too old to have children, laughed and giggled. Lord, who overheard this, asked, does she doubt his powers? And he went on to say, that the boy child will be named Isaac, whose name meant one who invokes laughter. And the men rose up from there to survey over upon Sodom. And Abraham had gone with them to see them off. And the Lord said, "Can I conceal from Abraham that which I am about to do?" Recalling Abraham's past services and promised future, the Lord then disclosed to him the true purpose of the divine journey. That is, to verify the accusations against Sodom and Gomorrah. The outcry regarding Sodom and Gomorrah being great and the accusation against them being grievous. The Lord said he had decided to come down and verify, if it is as an outcry reaching me, they will destroy completely, and if not, I wish to know. Here we see, something was weighing very heavy on Yahweh's conscience. He was not sure of something, which he was about to do. He knew there was something more to this issue than what he was briefed. And the information was fragmented, so he was seeking a second opinion, so to speak, just to clear his conscience before the act was committed. Why did Yahweh trust for this unbiased second opinion of Abraham, and not his divine council members, not his wife, not even his own son, as we shall see? He trusted one and only his loyal servant Abraham. Yahweh somehow believed that Abraham would give some unbiased valuable input to help take his decision. Abraham clearly knew something was bothering his Lord. Realizing the avoidability of the calamity, Abraham embarked upon a tactic of argumentative attrition. He said, "Perhaps there be 50 righteous ones inside the city, wilt thou destroy and not spare the place for the sake of 50 righteous ones within it?" Then he quickly added, "Far be it from you to do such a thing, to slay the righteous with the guilty. Far be it from you, the judge of all the earth, not to do justice." Let us take a moment here. Abraham, who was known for his diplomacy by his tribe and even by Anunnaki, carefully chose the number 50 as his opening argument. Why? Because he knew that number 50 is close and would strike a special chord in his Lord's heart. Number 50 was the rank of Lord Enlil in the clan of Anunnaki, second only to his father Anu, whose rank was 60. Lord Enlil, preferred number, or his lucky number so to speak, which he seems to use everywhere, is 7. This clearly proves beyond doubt that Yahweh was none other than Lord Enlil. Abraham further kept on reducing the number of people to 45, 40, 30, 20, and finally 10. Lord Yahweh said, "I shall not destroy, if there be 10. And departed. Abraham returned to his tent. And what is this outcry which Yahweh was talking about Sodom and Gomorrah? This answer we can find in the Kedorlaomer texts, in which it is recorded that a temple of Enlil in Ekor was desecrated and reduced to rubble. Enlil was trembling in anger and wanted to know who had the audacity to do such a thing. Ninurta, his eldest son, accused the followers of God Marduk of this evil deed. Who were the followers of Lord Marduk? They were Nephilim and Rephaim, the giants. The god lies. Who was this lying god? And why did he lie? It was the eldest son of Enlil, Ninurta, aka Balarama, who was a sworn enemy of Marduk. And who was the actual culprit, who desecrated the temple of Enlil, in Ekor? It was Lord Ninurta's best comrade in arms, Lord Nergal, aka Lord Era, aka Lord Karthikeya. He lied so that he could destroy his archenemy, Lord Marduk, at any cost. Even if the reason for which the war was fought, in which not 1 but 7 nuclear weapons were used, was based on a lie. The actual event is also recorded in the Kedorlaomer texts, as follows. Era, the pitiless one, entered the sacred precinct. He beheld the Ekor. His mouth opened, he said to his young men, "Carry off the spoil of Ekor, take away its valuables. Destroy its foundation, break down the enclosure of the shrine." When Enlil, loftily enthroned, heard that his temple had been destroyed, its shrine defiled, that in the Holy of Holies, the veil was torn away, he rushed back to Nippur. He then inquired from his son Ninurta, who had committed such an atrocity. Ninurta, instead of telling the truth, that it was Lord Nergal, he lied, and pointed a finger at innocent Lord Marduk and his followers. Lord Enlil was mad with anger, and his two deputies, his son Ninurta and Nergal, were fueling the fire by beating the drums of war. Lord Enlil, aka Yahweh, had a gut feeling that there is something missing, and the information was not fully presented to him correctly. That is why he flew down to Haran, close to Sodom and Gomorrah, where Abraham, his loyal servant, was staying, and asked him if what he heard about these two cities were true or not. And the two angels who accompanied Yahweh during this trip were none other than the perpetrators themselves, his son Ninurta and his friend Nergal. After a brief discussion with Abraham, just to clear his own conscience of what he had already decided to do, Yahweh sent his two deputies to the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah for some cosmetic reconnaissance, and instructed them to get Abraham's nephew Lot and his family out of Sodom before the bombardment. Why? So that his loyal servant wouldn't feel bad. When the two angels reached Sodom, they were at once recognized by Lot, who ushered them into his house. But the news spread that there were some strangers in town. Soon a big mob gathered around Lot's house, banging on the door asking for the strangers to come out. Then, the two angels blinded them with bright light and escaped, with Lot and his family members. Did you hear something strange? What, angels escaped? Aren't the angels supposed to be powerful? Sure, they could have handled a few villagers, don't you think? Go on, pick up that book and see if you can find the answer. Do you really want to know the power of one angel? Do you really want to know what one angel is capable of? Just to clear your conscience, let us give an account of an incident that happened and was recorded in history. There was a king, Sennacherib. Recorded in the Tales 2 Kings, chapter 18 and 19 offers the full story. We learn from the biblical report that in the 14th year of King Hezekiah, Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, came upon the walled cities of Jerusalem and captured them. He then sent two of his generals with a large army to Jerusalem, the capital. But instead of storming the city, the Assyrian general, Rabshakeh, began a verbal exchange with city leaders. In exchange, he insisted on Hebrew, so that the whole population can understand him. He said, "If ye say unto me, We trust in Yahweh, our God. Now then, am I come against this place to destroy it? Without Yahweh, Yahweh did say unto me, Go up against this land, and destroy it." The people of Jerusalem, along with their king Hezekiah, could not believe their ears and pleaded with Rabshakeh to cease saying such untrue things about their God Yahweh. When King Hezekiah was told of the blasphemy, he rented his clothes, and covered himself with sackcloth, and went into the house of Yahweh. And he sent word to the prophet Isaiah, saying, The king of Assyria hath sent to scorn the living God. And the word of Yahweh came back through his prophet Isaiah. Concerning the king of Assyria, the way that he came. He shall return, and unto this city he shall not come in. For I shall defend this city to save it. And it came to pass that night, that the angel of Yahweh went forth, and smote in the camp of the Assyrians 185,000. And at sunrise, lo and behold, they were all dead corpses. So Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, departed, and journeyed back and dwelt in Nineveh. Such is the power and chivalry of one angel. They could kill, single-handed 185,000 humans, in a matter of hours. And so, the two angels escaped from Sodom? We at Leonebula pondered on that question and concluded, there could be more than one reason why this could have happened. 1. They were under strict orders from Yahweh. They were there to just evacuate Lot and his family. 2. The angels didn't want to get into some street fight with the villagers, because they knew that there were among the villagers also some beings who were more powerful, namely giants, who if they engaged, would put a stiff fight. That these giants were more than a match for them. And also if this fight started, it could carry on even into the early hours of the morning, during which time Yahweh had decided to destroy the two cities. 3. Even if they were to fight it alone, and kill everyone, some would escape, and create the same problem tomorrow. Instead, the best option is to nuke them, and finish them once and for all. 4. Real reason, the truth, according to Sumerian clay tablets was, time was running out. They had to get back to the base and board their combat aircraft, load the nuclear weapons, and swoop back to these cities and bombard them. Yes, my fellow viewers, it was these so-called angels Anunnakis, namely Lord Ninurta and Lord Nergal, who nuked cities of Sodom and Gomorrah with 7 nuclear weapons. The very angels who accompanied God Yahweh when he visited Abraham. This unspeakable massacre of innocent humans and giants was based on a lie. So much so, that enmity between giants, along with their fellow humans, against Anunnaki, rose to such a fever pitch, that culminated in the ultimate war of Armageddon, between the Anunnakis and giants, which was fought on planet Mars.